Inju Pushung, Kaluntiba, Samburu Cho, Pemima Chidu Tozo, Pembasrilla Cho, Nabani, Tari, Zete, Hansayang, Kachimbu Yobe, Kanshichila, Tarinde, Europe, Yogishunu, Trezo Teng Tambudi, Kachimbuji, Bamuzi Nache, De Pebadi, Trezo Gitsab Shuche, Pemasitochena, that somebody touched the Leshu. Resolution of the first European Tibetan Youth Parliament. Based on the aims of the first European Tibetan Youth Parliament, it has reached the following common positions. Point 1, democratization. The first European Tibetan Youth Parliament advocates the introduction of an upper and lower house, the upper house being the current parliament without the representatives of the Buddhist schools and Pön tradition, and by reducing the number of the parliamentarians, and the lower house being based on political parties, population, and residency. Advocates the strengthening of the Election Commission. The Election Commission shall simplify and facilitate the registration process for the Green Book. They shall also improve communication and enhance the amount of information given about the election process. Requests future candidates of the elections in 2011 to hold election campaigns via the internet. Advocates the implementation of more political education for youth in local communities. Activism and resistance. The first European Tibetan Youth Parliament regarding our resistance movement still believes in the principle of non-violence, stands in solidarity with the individual who decides by himself to perform a hunger strike but does not encourage the initiation of it, considers conventional methods of protest such as demonstrations, petitions, vigils, and lobbying as effective ways to pursue our goals, recommends obtaining permits for protest actions in general. Only if permits are not granted for reasons that are unacceptable, we accept protest actions without permits. Considers boycotts as an ineffective measure with which to apply pressure on the Chinese government. Approves of the continuation of the dialogue with the Chinese government only if the following preconditions are fulfilled. A third-party observer is admitted to the dialogue process. The venue of the talks should be outside the People's Republic of China. The Chinese side has acknowledged that there is a Tibetan issue. Considers the preservation of Tibetan culture as highly important and therefore asks all Tibetans to wear Tibetan dress and speak Tibetan during Tibetan events and protest actions. It advocates the cooperation of the Tibetan non-governmental organizations in Europe with non-Tibetan organizations to create a synergy effect and to spread awareness of the Tibetan issue through other organizations such as environmental organizations. It recommends the establishment of an activist network within the next 3 years. The purpose of this network is to train activists, coordinate non-violent direct actions internationally, and to support detained activists. At a later stage, it should support activists inside Tibet as well. Secularization. The first European Tibetan Youth Parliament supports the secularization process in the Tibetan society, but with regard to the political situation of Tibet, we Tibetans have to retain the importance of religion in our society in order to preserve our cultural identity. Nevertheless, we Tibetans should work on fostering the secularization process in the Tibetan society. Political decisions should be based on evidence and facts, and every Tibetan should be aware of his or her individual responsibility. Advocates the amendment in the Charter of Tibetans in Exile Constitution regarding the removal of the reserved seats for the Tibetan Buddhist sects. As a consequence, the dual voting right of monks and nuns is to be abolished. Relation between Central Tibetan Administration and Tibetan youth. The first European Tibetan Youth Parliament encourages the CTA to ensure highly qualified CTA employees who can interact successfully with today's youth on an equal level to achieve the following goals. Recruitment of CTA employees being based on motivation and qualifications. Furthermore, relaxed language restrictions for highly qualified applicants. Nepotism must be avoided at all costs. A youth internship program for officers of Tibet in Europe by improving the cooperation of the CTA with the Tibetan youth in Europe. The last point is young Tibetans in Europe. The first European Tibetan Youth Parliament advocates the initiation of a second European Tibetan Youth Parliament, advocates the founding of new Tibetan Youth Association in Europe branches in other European countries where needed, and the collaboration with existing local Tibetan youth organizations. Advocates the organization of European-wide events to bring young Tibetans in Europe together in order to overcome linguistic and geographical barriers. Thank you. Nambanila dia jembu mashungela seshi chuye anda kuri sojune manzugi parinde chondu la tela pabe zenju peshung la begu shue di pege dan la konzu gyur shimbai di chabada nabalenge la jadon ya pyungi sungdo Tamodi manzo zenju peshung gi kalun cheba samduru buchi chol pyugi